All right, welcome everybody to our, oh, hi, Tara Kay from Utah. Just talked with you the other day. Good to see you. Brittany, welcome. We've got our whole panel here. Though we got the whole group together. Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody to our webinar today, our Y-Tri webinar on supporting staff resilience and well-being. Really appreciate our panel showing up and really appreciate all of our attendees as well. I just love seeing where everybody tunes in from. It's such a fun community to be a part of. So my name's Jason Johnson. I'll be the webinar host for the day. And we've got, I think, a really important topic and a really powerhouse panel with us today to help us out with this topic. Before we get into both of those, let me just give you a couple of notable items regarding the nature of the webinar itself today. So we're going to plan on going for about an hour. And we do have a live chat available. The chat is a great place to connect and share ideas and respond to some of the ideas that are being shared. One thing I would request, if you're willing, the chat is set up for some people. The default in the chat, it makes it so that your comments can't be seen by everyone. So if you wouldn't mind, take a look at your chat, and where you would normally type a message, right above the message that you would type, it says to, and then there's a little drop-down menu. And if that says anything other than everyone, if that says to hosts and panelists, then everybody else can't see your comment. So if you are willing, please adjust that in your chat so you're sharing comments with everyone. That way everybody will be able to see your comment. And then after you've made that adjustment, go ahead and type into the chat. Let's see, it is it's almost the last week of May. So here's what I want in the chat. Share an emoji that describes or expresses how you are feeling at this point in the school year. Some of you are just finishing up. Some of you may have a week or two left, but go ahead and emote in the chat with how you're feeling on May 23rd within the school year. uh, yeah, you always outdo yourself with the emojis. They make me laugh. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Regardless of how you're feeling, hopefully for the next hour, you'll feel like you're part of a discussion that's really helpful to you. I know I'm excited for it. So I represent the Y-Tri organization. We're the host for these webinars. We've been around for about 20 years. For those that haven't been to a webinar before or haven't cross paths with us, our specialty is the topic of resilience. We train educators and mental health professionals to be able to teach their students and their clients the skills and the sources of resilience. And that's kind of how we've made our mark in education over the last 20 years. My background is I'm a school psychologist, came from the world of public ed, and for the last 4 years have been able to be the host and the moderator of these webinars. And it's just been an awesome experience for me. Really, really grateful that I get to participate in these. So the topic for our webinar today is going to be around supporting staff resilience and well-being. And we have just an awesome panel today, a powerhouse panel of social workers. And who better to help lead out this discussion than this panel that we've got. So let me introduce our panel, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion. First, we've got Capella Hauer. Capella is the Associate Director of the School Social Work Association of America. Really grateful to have SSWAA representation here today. Worked in New Mexico, significant experience working with elementary age children, advocate for trauma-informed practice and youth mental health. Also runs a nonprofit bakery that supports local organizations and volunteers as a grief support facilitator. Capella, welcome. Next, we have Dr. Jacqueline Anthony, with over 25 years in school social work. Dr. Anthony has a wealth of experience supporting students and educators. Began her career in Clayton County Public Schools, now serves as the Director of Social Work Services for Atlanta Public Schools. Dr. Anthony is known for her leadership in implementing mental health supports, truancy prevention programs, also a published author and hosts of podcasts to educate the community on social work services. Dr. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. J.R. Bullard Batiste. Dr. Bullard is a licensed clinical social worker with a doctorate in social work from Walden University, has extensive experience in school social work and trauma-informed education. As the professional development coordinator for the School Social Work Association of America, Dr. Bullard Batiste is committed to training school staff to create supportive learning environments, also teaches at Walden University and runs a private practice focusing on therapy for individuals, couples, and families. Welcome, Dr. B.
Thank you so much.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Brittany Jones. Brittany is a licensed master social worker with 9 years of experience as a certified social worker, two-time graduate of Kennesaw State University, with focuses on social work, family and children. Currently, Brittany is pursuing a PhD in social work policy, planning, and administration. Research interests include chronic absenteeism, interventions for minority students in urban districts. Brittany, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And then I am Jason Johnson. I'll be the host. As I mentioned, my background is a school psychologist, came from the world of public education, where I worked as a school psych in the largest school district in the state of Utah. And then I've been with the YTRI organization for the last 8 years as the director of training and research, and just love the opportunity that I get to work with educators and mental health professionals throughout the country. So I want to get right into it, and we're going to be talking about supporting staff resilience and well-being. To start things off, maybe I gave kind of small introductions, but I'm wondering if you could all tell us just a little bit more about your current role, what you've been working on, and what your areas of focus have been for the last little while. Maybe mention the communities that you serve. Let's just go around the group. Let's go Capella, Dr. Anthony, Dr. B, and then Brittany.
Sure. So as you had mentioned, I am the Associate Executive Director for SWA. I've been with the organization coming up on 4 years now. And for those joining us today who haven't heard too much about SWA yet, we are the national organization that supports the profession of school social work. We provide to our members and not yet members professional development. We put on a massive conference each year. And I'll let Dr. B tell you a little bit more about the trainings we offer, but through our membership, we also provide liability insurance, tools and resources for school social workers, and of course, advocacy at a national level. That's a huge part of our work, is just ensuring that the profession has parity across the nation and is represented in legislation. So that's just a little bit about us. I know Jason's going to share our website at the end of this, so you'll be able to check out all the things that we do, because we do a lot.
Thank you. Fantastic. Dr. Anthony. I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to throw the SWA website in right now in the chat.
Perfect. All right. So I've been with Atlanta Public Schools 8 years now. Started as the coordinator for social work services, but due to the nature and the expansion and the growth, we knew that we needed to grow as well as a department. And so now I'm the director, social work services. A lot of what we concentrate on deals with anything and all things whole child, and removing barriers that impact or affect their ability to not only thrive in school, but thrive throughout life. And so poverty can be a barrier. We can't remove that, but we can provide resources and supports. Homelessness, truancy in attendance, anything dealing with graduation rates, trauma, mental health, crises. So pretty much anything that we believe is a barrier, we try to support our students and our staff. And so we do a lot of work with staff too. Our department is nestled within student services, and we believed that we would just be supporting students, or at least that's what I thought I would be doing. But it grew into also supporting adults, the staff as well. And we can talk about that a little bit more as we progress through this. But as we saw needs changing, we changed with them, we adapted. And so Atlanta Public Schools is in this capital of Georgia, Atlanta. It is one of the large urban school districts. We serve a little bit over 50,000 students. And we are within Fulton County, which is again in the capital of Atlanta.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. B.
Yeah, thank you. I am currently the professional development coordinator for School Social Work Association of America. And as Capella said, we do a lot of things for school social workers across the nation. Prior to this, I was a school social worker in the greater New Orleans area. So shout out all my Louisiana folks. I miss the crawfish bowls at the end of the school year. I can tell you that, working for SWA. But we do a lot of amazing things. We do a lot of professional development throughout the years. We have webinars that are live. We have recorded webinars and an on-demand platform where you can go and do a 1-hour CE, select it, watch it, get your CE that you need. We also have our large conference every year, our annual National School Social Work Conference. Next year we'll be in Atlanta, which is really exciting. And then this year we have a summer symposium that is our first annual, and it's really going to be focused on the wellness and well-being of the school social workers and mental health professionals themselves. So if you haven't had a chance, you haven't heard about it, we're going to be in Utah this summer doing a summer symposium for the first time. And I think it's going to be really exciting because it's super focused and, just trying to make sure everyone is taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany.
Hello, so today is actually my last day of year 9 being a school social worker for Clayton County Public Schools. So next year I'll be beginning year 10 as a school social worker. Clayton County, much to what Dr. Anthony already said, Clayton County is also an urban school district. We also serve over 50,000 students. Post-COVID, we have really been focused on trauma. We've been focused on improving the attendance rate and the graduation rate just because we saw those issues perpetuated by the pandemic. Everyone in my department is trained in CBIT, which is cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools. So we do trauma groups, and we also address barriers to attendance to support the graduation rate. We, like I said, just saw an uptick of mental health referrals and just mental health issues overall after the pandemic. So we've just been working to hopefully remove those barriers to improve students' attendance and student graduation rate.
I love it. Thank you so much. It's a perfect lead in to where I want to go next. So as I mentioned, my background was psych, and when I first got into education life as a school psych, you kind of have your, I won't call them blinders, but I was just very focused on like my role, just making sure I didn't mess anything up. I didn't fully understand the connection between specifically, I think, like social workers, counselors, and psychs. And as I went through my own career, and then as I've had the opportunity to work more broadly throughout the country now, I've really, really come to appreciate the role that social workers play within a school. And they're such an important part of the team. When the thought of this topic came up today, I knew that it was some social workers I wanted to hear from. So what I wanted you to share, maybe to set the table for the rest of the discussion, is let's talk a little bit about, so we want to talk about supporting staff wellness, potentially supporting student wellness as well, because I think they are interconnected. But one of the topics that regularly comes up when I go out, I still train thousands of educators a year in my capacity. One of the topics that continues to come up is the topic of trauma. And a few of you have mentioned that as well. Hoping that we could maybe just try to get on the same page around some general information on the topic of trauma, vicarious trauma, wellness, et cetera, and then use that as a platform to discuss some other strategies and ideas around that. Let's just, I'm going to modify the order a little bit, probably on every question. Let's start off, let's go Dr. Anthony, Dr. Ballard, Brittany, and then Capella.
All right, so can we talk about COVID-19 and how much that has affected parents, staff members, principals, just everyone. If we don't, if we haven't personally been touched by COVID, we know of someone that has. We lost, some people. And I think the socialization for our students was impacted, and our staff are seeing a different student as a result. And I think the parents, have been affected as well. And which means that, we had to make some adjustments in terms of how we work with our students, how we work with parents, and really broaden our scope. For instance, let's talk about attendance. Brittany talked about, the focus being attendance. Attendance was horrible, absolutely horrible, not only in just Georgia, but across the nation. And we're looking at chronic absenteeism, not just truancy. And so really having to address that in a different way, because previously, and I'm just going to speak for my school district right now, it was all punitive. You don't come to school, this is what happens. We're going to do ABC 1, 2, 3 to you. And your child, and it ultimately ends in a referral to, either Division of Family and Children's Services or a referral to juvenile court. We really had to learn to move out of punitive to corrective and support. Because again, we're talking about chronic absenteeism, which includes more than just, unexcused absences. What kind of resources and supports can we put in place, and how do we begin to change the mindset? And how do we begin to create a culture and climate of attending school? Because it's really looking at a multi-tiered approach where you set a foundation, and then from there, because you really should be concentrating on prevention, not intervention. You can't treat tier 1 prevention issues or concerns or foundational concerns using tier 2 interventions. It just doesn't work. And so we had to make some shifts, some paradigm shifts. So that's just with attendance. And we cannot treat the student, when I talk about whole child, you cannot treat the student as if issues are mutually exclusive. It all intertwines. Attendance intertwines with trauma, trauma intertwines with, behavioral health, which intertwines with behaviors, that you may see in the school that result in disciplining, which impact the ability for that student to be successful academically in school. And so we really had to look at a whole child approach in order to do that. We are doing a lot of motivational interviewing, if you will. We find that very successful. As what Brittany talked about, we're moving to trauma focused CBT, really putting those kinds of things in place. And really what we're trying to do is to work more with students and make sure that we do those individual and groups, whether it be check in, check out, check and connect, motivational interviewing and those kinds of things. We have seen an uptick in violence. And so we're really trying to work with our communities and with our organizations and agencies. So it's really about partnership because, you know, schools are a microcosm of what we see in the larger society. And we can't operate as if we're not in the larger society. So we really work hard to develop those partnerships and work together with our partners. So I'll stop there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think it's really accurately representative of the same feedback I'm getting, and all of those things have an impact, direct impact on the staff wellness overall as well. So thank you so much, Dr. B.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we look at trauma and trauma-informed practices, I think trauma-informed practices has started to become kind of a buzzword. Everybody wants it. Everybody says, let's do it. But then what it actually takes to become trauma sensitive within the schooling environment is a way different beast. It's a lot harder to get to. It takes multiple years of learning, unlearning, building on each other. Trauma is, you know, systemic, it's collective, it's historically rooted. There's a lot of traumas that students and staff go through on a daily basis, that they were born into, that this society puts on them. And then we had, exactly like Dr. Anthony said, everybody was in a collective trauma of COVID-19 for a while. It impacted people differently, but everybody was together in that trauma. And coming out of that, everything is different. We know everything's different. So we're trying to now find out, how do we become more resilient? And to become resilient, it has to go along with those same things of trauma. It has to be systemic. It has to be collective. It's got to be built into the policy. It's got to be part of everything. And then I know a lot of us, I think we all experience burnout from time to time. And burnout can impact anyone in any profession. Teachers, it can affect, you know, anybody who's working anywhere can be burnt out. And you can, one of the things with burnout though, is you can remedy that by quitting your current job. If you quit and go somewhere else, the burnout can stop. But vicarious trauma, all of us who are mental health professionals, who work with students, who work with trauma on a daily basis, we know that we can become traumatized from what our clients have experienced, our students have experienced, and our teachers have experienced. And then that changes our worldview. So if you are vicariously traumatized through the work that you're doing, it's almost as if you are living through this trauma as well. And that can't be resolved by just quitting your job. That is now a part of you, a part of your life, and a part of your worldview and how you're seeing things through your lens. So I think it's just really important when we talk about trauma-informed care to make sure we also focus on the adults in the building. And I think sometimes that is forgotten. We want the best for our students, but then to do that, we do have to focus on how do we provide the best for our staff, because if they're all burnt out, they could all quit and maybe not be burnt out in a couple weeks, but that's not ever going to happen. We love our staff, we love our teachers, we're glad we're all in this together, but we want to, you know, mitigate and try to impact how we're teaching through how we're impacting our teachers. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Great summary. And that's part of why I was really excited at this topic for this time of year. This is the time of year where it feels like, you know, in some cases we're helping kiddos limp across the finish line, but it also sometimes feels like we're just trying to limp across the finish line and make it at the end, and then figure out how am I going to recharge my batteries again going into next year, because right now, education's always a hefty load, but right now it just feels particularly heavy. Great responses. Let's, I think next in line we had Brittany, and then we'll hear from Capella.
For my district, I would say because trauma has so significantly impacted everyone since COVID, the reach of the professionals that deal with trauma in the district has expanded. So to me, that's been a positive change that I've seen. And by that, I mean, before the pandemic, I would say anything related to trauma was pretty much dealt with by student support professionals. But since the pandemic, where we've come to understand that everybody has some form of trauma, I feel like now we're pushing SEL, social emotional learning, to support teachers and students. In my district, we're also supporting staff wellness by like my department, we promote like teacher self-care seminars and informational sessions on how to take care of themselves to prevent burnout. So I think like the reach of the word has changed since COVID. And in my district, we've used it in a way to promote wellness, I think for students and staff, parents included as well overall.
Thank you. Capella.
Yeah, I think what everybody has said already was beautiful and perfectly well described and summed up. I think the only thing I'll kind of add to wrap it all together is kind of touching on what everyone spoke on a little bit. We know that resiliency mostly comes from positive relationships. And we're all here for the betterment of our students, but if we as adults aren't emotionally, mentally able to show up and build those relationships, we can't help build resilience in our students and really address or, you know, be part of the resilience that can help with that trauma. So I just want to kind of say that's a big reason why we're talking on this today, is because those adults, they really need that wellness. And like Dr. B said, they need to be trauma informed, not just around the scope of what that means for the students, but what that means for themselves, so they can be that safe, caring, trustworthy adult that will help build resilience throughout the whole campus.
Awesome. Thank you. So I want to just explore just in a little more detail now. I think that that's a great setup. All your responses were a perfect setup for where I want to go next. All of your roles in the specific capacities you operate in, and also in connection to SWA and the role that SWA plays for both staff and students throughout the country, I think gives you some unique insight on this. Maybe just talk a little bit more about some of the trends that you're seeing on the professional community, and then also what impact that's having on the campus communities from what you've seen. And then we're going to pivot over to some strategies after that specifically to address this. But I wanted to hear a little bit more about some of the trends and the impact. Let's go, let's start with Dr. B, and then we'll go Brittany, Capella, and then Dr. Anthony.
All right. I think some of the trends that are notable for me, I believe everyone is more isolated now than ever before. Of course, you know, there was a time where we all were isolated from everyone. But our profession, there was a big push for some funding to go into schools for mental health support after the pandemic, which was awesome. Showcased, you know, how important mental health is. And we do know that those funds are slowly starting to trickle away. And I think that that is worrisome, because schools need to figure out maybe how to pivot and continue the large mental health push in their schools with that. But I think that, like Capella was saying, it just rings true to me that building positive relationships, supportive, strong relationships is one of the most important mitigating factors for all of this. And we can't do that unless we're well ourselves. And I think rarely we focus on ourselves. In, I believe, 2021, NASW revamped the Code of Ethics to include specifically self-care, which is also becoming a buzzword, and some people roll their eyes when they hear self-care at this point. But and I think part of that is because it was pushed in, and now if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not focused on our own wellness, we are practicing unethically, but there's no how to, and there's no support for how should this look in a schoolhouse, how should this look in the profession itself, how do we support the agencies that are employing mental health professionals to take care of themselves. So I love that Brittany was saying her school has a focus on self-care and wellness for teachers and staff. I think that's an amazing trend we're starting to see, and I hope that catches on everywhere. Yeah, I always am worried about those who aren't taking care of themselves, because it's cliche for a reason that you know, you got to put your own mask on before you help someone else, and we often tell others that, and we don't take that ourselves.
Thank you. Brittany.
I would say that I echo a lot of what Dr. B said, specifically around the mental health and the self-care of the professionals, specifically social workers. I think that that is definitely a current trend. To that, I would add that telemental health has been on the rise and how we can provide services virtually since the pandemic. I know in my district, we moved from having attendance meetings or meetings to discuss attendance in person to now we have an option for Zoom. And that increasing the services we're able to provide. I would say on top of that, a current trend is also, like Dr. B said, social isolation and how students respond or interact with their peers. So we've been doing a lot of work on interpersonal relationships, coping skills, resiliency, things of that nature to support students in the process that they're going through with regulating, I guess, their emotions and how they interact with their peers. And lastly, I think I would say social justice and just the current climate is definitely a current trend and impacting our students in a bigger and major way. So we've had to be sensitive to all of these factors, and that, of course, influences our practice.
Thank you so much, Capella.
I think some pieces that I'll add, you know, what both Brittany and Dr. B talked about loneliness, with which the Surgeon General published a whole thing on. He also talked or published about youth mental health crisis, which is still ongoing. So absolutely, we've seen higher rates of mental health incidents or reaching out on the behalf of students. And I think that's happening for a few reasons. I think one, the younger generations are more open and vocal about mental health issues, which is like a really big positive. And I also think it is just, there has been an escalation of these mental health issues. I also see there is a lack of support. So as Brittany mentioned, there's a lot more move towards telehealth. And that is fantastic. And it's also leaving some of the local communities or like local therapeutics empty. So it is creating, it's an interesting time to be in because there are lack of local supports to work with, as well as funding, as Dr. B mentioned, and then I think professional support as well. There's high rates of burnout with social workers, with teachers, just across the board in education. And I think that leads to some additional professional isolation because you're not getting those same professional supports that you would have typically maybe 5-10 years ago, because so many people around you are burning out.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Anthony.
I'm gonna piggy district. We have, am I frozen? Did I freeze
You
on
were,
you
but
all?
you're
Okay.
unfrozen now.
Okay. So in my district, we have, I talked about partnerships previously. We are partnered with mental health providers. So we have 7 providers that we have contracts with that are partnered with each of our schools, who push into our schools and provide therapy to our students, school-based therapy for our students. We also have hired our own clinical therapists. We only have 7. I'm hoping that we can expand that with some grant work so that we can have some more clinical therapists that can have a caseload of at least 30 students. But I say all of that to say, when you talked about burnout, when we're working with our mental health providers, the turnover of the therapists is high. And it really impacts the continuity of services and supports provided to our students because the turnover is so high. And so they're picking up again. And you know how long it takes to establish a rapport and relationship with these kids. And so they've established a relationship and a rapport, and then boom, 6 months later, that person is left. And now, you know, they have to start all over again. So that's a trend that we are seeing. The other trend, and you know, I don't know if it's funny, haha funny, or strange funny. You know, school social work has always, in my mind, been the outsider within in an educational setting. So from my observation, teachers and educators, staff members who are teaching and learning curriculum and instruction, they see what we do as airy-fairy. I'm not, they don't see it like that anymore. I mean, it's like, can you come help us, like open arms, like, we don't know what you do, but please do it, situation. So even though they still may not understand the work, they are beginning to be more accepting and, of what we provide, what we bring to the table. It's no longer seen as airy-fairy. And so that's another trend. For us, we are seeing an increase in violence. And so, in the community, which spills over into the schools. And so we're doing a lot of work, and the trend that we are seeing is more parents who are being more open to, bridging the gaps, more, parent engagement, if you will, and bridging the gap to try to make sure that, we have some supports in place around the violence and stopping and ending the violence. So that's what we're seeing on our end.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just writing notes down. I'm so much of what you're all saying is resonating really deeply with me based on my own experience as an educator, as well as someone that trains a lot of educators. But those ideas of relationships and self-care, they elicit eye rolls sometimes. Like everybody agrees on it. Sometimes it's kind of like, yeah, no duh. But they also, we know they have such an impact on us. And now I'm also like dreaming of this utopian world, because I feel like ASCA, which is school counselors, NASP, which is school psychologists, and SWA, which is school social workers, they all have had to pivot to make their model like more directly addressing the mental health side of things. I feel like we need an Avengers team up, because my last 2 years in public ed, I'm not exaggerating to say, I had adult staff in my office talking to me, talking through things as frequently as I had individual students in my office. And that idea of loneliness was there then. And I think it only feels even deeper right now, where you can be in a building of 1,500 people and still feel really lonely, like you're on an island. And it all contributes to our ability to do our job at the best level we can, and then go home and be the best version of ourselves at home, and then come back recharged. And so this conversation is really, really important. So for the next step, here's what I want to do. I'm going to combine, hopefully this doesn't complicate the questions, but I want to combine 2 questions and give you an opportunity to respond to 2 things on your turn. Number one, when we were talking prior to this, this webinar, Dr. B brought up this really interesting idea about a gap that exists oftentimes in services, between services we offer students versus what's offered for the adult staff. And that gap is real, and it has an impact on our own well-being. And so if you have thoughts on that, I'd love to hear you address some thoughts on that gap that exists between services. And then I do want to get into some strategies as well. And so I'd love to hear on this go round from you. Also, I'd love to have you share a strategy. What's a go-to strategy that you could share or suggest? Let's go focused on staff that could help staff or individuals improve or better support their own wellness in the process. For this round, let's start with Brittany. Let's go Brittany, Capella, Dr. Anthony, and then Dr. B.
So I guess I would say that in order to support staff, what I do is, because I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my words together because I feel so ambivalent about the topic. I do agree with Dr. B that there is a gap, but I also think that it's a lot of added pressure to have the school social worker fill that gap. But I also think that there's a need. So I guess, like I said, I'm ambivalent about it, but the way that I've handled it, because I do agree that I have had an increase of just staff referrals just as much as I have had student referrals, and not just for the mental health side of things in my district. It's been a lot of, we need written utility assistance, and we need food resources, and just a lot of poverty all around. So it's been a little overwhelming, but what I would suggest as an intervention is always tell people you have to take care of yourself first. As cliche as that sounds, you know, you can't help anyone else if you don't help yourself. I encourage people to explore therapy if that's an option. We have resources in my district. We have partnered with mental health professionals, like Dr. Anthony mentioned, that they do in their district to support student health for staff. This year specifically, Human Resources has sent out EAP services several times. I think that district-wide, it has been more of an approach to not only acknowledge that these things exist, but to attempt to provide the services that they can or resources that they can to address it. They've had a lot of just different staff events to boost morale, to try to, I think, reduce burnout by having things after work like happy hours or go bowling or just anything, or go work out to support your own physical and mental health. So I think, like I said, the gap exists. I think it can be a little overwhelming for the school social worker to fill that gap, but I think that it's going to be one of the things that we have to continue to evolve our practice to fit the need.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Capella, you're next.
Sure. Yeah, the gap is interesting. I think that's a very kind of layered topic to try to unpack. But I think a lot of it, like we were talking about, there's so much systemic that comes up, and there's so many things within education that are systemic. That, taking an example of a third grade teacher, there are decisions being made for them at a national level, at a state level, at a district level that they have no control over, and puts more work on their plate, even if it might not be the best for their community or their classroom and how they're learning or want or need to be learning. So much of it is systemic. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the high burnout and how much turnover we're seeing in education right now. And I think for our student, it's like this piling on effect, because staff leave and then our students have this feeling of insecurity, distrust of anyone new coming in. And that kind of even started during the pandemic, really, because they were looking to the adults to tell them what's safe, what are we supposed to do? And it was this constant back and forth of like, well, we're going to stay home now. Now we're going to go to school, but we have to wear masks. But this week we have to go home. And this week we can come back, but we have to not wear masks. But then in a few weeks we will. So it's like the adult, in their view, I'm sure like the adults couldn't really figure it out. So there's a lot of, I think, disconnect too, and that probably creates even more of a gap and inability to really build those relationships. And it is difficult when you're in a position or in a community where the social worker is expected to do that. I know, thinking about resources, something I did for quite a few years in my district was worked with some local restaurants, like yoga studios, places like that, and personal trainers, and asked for donations. And we would do a monthly challenge as a staff, and anyone who completed the challenge, like, they didn't have to prove it to me. They basically just had to tell me they did it, and they would get a prize from one of our community sponsors. So it was a free yoga class or a free personal training or a gift card to Chipotle. Excuse me. I work at home, so I don't usually talk this much, and then my throat gets really dry and I cough. And all of the challenges were wellness based and research driven. So it was practicing mindfulness for a month. It was practicing walking 3 times a week for a month. Things that we know evidence-based helps promote positive mental health. So that's one strategy. It didn't take too much work for me. It was mostly just building those relationships and asking for donations. And then it was set up for the year.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Anthony.
So a few of the things that we've been doing, we've partnered with a organization that really helped social workers not have to spend as much time on looking for resources. So it's called Find Help. We branded ours, it's called APS Cares, findhelp.com. I'll put the link in here so you all can see what I'm talking about. But we were spending, prior to COVID, we were spending a lot of our energy, making sure that, let's say, the resources in this particular community are still available. Is the number still working? Are the times and the hours? We no longer, we removed ourselves from that. So it gives us more time to actually work with students. And the resources, this particular agency is not just about, the parents, it's for students, it's for community members, it's for staff. All you have to do is put your zip code in there, and it will help you to find whatever resources you need. So that's one of the things that we've done, and we've a great push because all of the resources are up to date. They call for us. They make sure that it's working on our behalf. And they're constantly updating for housing, for assistance with utilities, all of that. I think Brittany, or maybe it was Capella, shared, our staff are starting to say, they need help with, basic necessities, such as food. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've had, staff who became homeless. There was, the evictions and whatever that was going on. And so we were able to really make sure we poured into making sure that we had some housing resources identified for that platform as well. One of the other things that we're looking at, I think we really need to talk about this, is that you have to have buy-in. So if staff need the help, the school leader has to have buy-in that is important. If it's not important, then you will see it. You will see, a school or schools who have high teacher absenteeism, because people, sometimes you don't have to tell people self-care. They're going to self-care. If I need this day, I'm going to take it. The sick day is there, I'm taking it. And so, really helping our school leaders to have some buy-in to that. We do have schools that have created Zen rooms. So it's not the teacher's lounge. It is a Zen room. You go in there and they have those gravity chairs in there. You know what I'm saying? They have those bean bags. You can go in there and you can do a little, Zen stuff or what have you. So it's actually a Zen room. And for those particular schools, we have seen an increase or improved teacher, attendance. So if the buy-in is there, again, if you're taking care of the teachers, they won't eat the kids. You feed them, they won't eat them. So those kinds of things are important. So when you talk about yoga and all of that, even if you don't do the Zen room, having, at least, once a quarter where you dedicate some time to self-care for your staff, whether it be those massages, having someone creating a partnership to have someone to come in and do like massages, 10-minute massages for your staff, doing the yoga. Having someone come in and do Pilates with your staff, all of those kinds of things are key and important, and really help to pour back into your staff and help to energize them and prepare for working with our kids.
I love it. I wrote down, that's the quote of the day. You feed them, they won't eat them. That's great. Dr. B.
Yeah, I think everyone's really everything they said has resonated with me. And someone, Tina here in the chat said adding time off for mental health care for teachers in their contracts. I think that that's amazing. Shout out. I think that's like one of the most important parts, like Brittany said and Capella said, for the social worker themselves to be tasked to also care for the adults' mental health in the building, while make sure we're focusing on students, is we're setting ourselves up. But we know that there's a gap and we know that there's support. So being able to advocate for teachers, advocate for things like having yoga or having a Zen room or having some mental health time, it's super important. And I think that when we look at like trauma-informed care, realizing that we can't care for students in trauma-sensitive ways if we're not caring for our adults in the same way and teaching them through that. Some of the strategies that I would always recommend is like joining professional networks like SWA or NASP or whichever, whatever field you're in, joining national organizations that can get you connected so you're not isolated yourself as a professional, and you can reach a little bit further outside of like your zone of influence and see what else is going on and how other people are handling things. And then one time during the pandemic, I remember our CEO of the charter schools came in and said, it's okay to not be okay. And I think there was just a collective exhale and everybody was like, okay, okay. And then there were some people who were saying, have you told the have you told the principals this? Have you told the administrator? So I think that just recognizing it's okay to feel the feelings that we're feeling and then to take care of yourself. And I always recommend that people realize that there's a huge difference between self-care and coping skills. Self-care, yes, we're rolling our eyes. I know everybody is behind your screens, but self-care and actually caring for yourself versus coping skills. So coping skills are things that you can do to deal with what's going on. So that might be running and taking that day off that you have because you need it. So whatever you can do to deal with what you're in currently, which might be burnout, might be vicarious trauma, where the self-care is things that you do more consistently on a regular basis, not just getting massages, because we're not, unless you're independently wealthy, which most social workers aren't, that's not like something you can do in the moment to really care for yourself. But figuring out what you can do to heal, not just deal with what's going on. Like I said, just recognizing your feelings, recognizing the other people that you can call on and to support you professionally and personally, and always looking out for your boundaries because we easily bleed school into every aspect of our lives. So modeling healthy, appropriate boundaries as the social worker in the building for the students and the other staff, I think is really important. And we can't do that if we're not taking care of ourselves.
This is so good. Thank you so much. Great, great responses. I'm going to add my endorsement to everything that was just said. But one thing that stuck out to me that I think I didn't fully grasp as a young school psychologist that I came to appreciate more later. But Dr. B talked about the power of community and the power of some of these associations. And I think that was part of it early on. I think I almost viewed like, are these associations like these political tools that are trying to pull me into? And I started to realize more into my career and appreciate much more so now. These are communities. These are communities that want to support one another. We all have specific roles and we all want to work together. But then some of the challenges that we all face, social worker challenges are unique within a building. School psych challenges are unique within a building. And that association can really provide a great community of support. So absolutely add my endorsement to that as well. Join and become part of whatever community opportunities you have there within the field. I want to get around before we finish up because these are connected and this is important. I think it's tough to talk about staff wellness without talking about student wellness because they impact one another. They in a real way. So I was wondering if we could go through one round and just give us a strategy for helping improve student wellness, something that you've tried, you've done, you've seen done in the process. That'll probably take us towards the end. But for this round of strategies, let's go Capella, Dr. Anthony, Dr. B, and then Brittany.
I'll try to keep mine quick. I think quite a few people do this already, but finding ways to build moments of attention and mindfulness into each day. So whether that's mindfulness Mondays on the student announcements or transitioning before recess or a different class, popping up a quick mindfulness to kind of recenter or even energize students. Just kind of having that regulating practice consistently is a good one.
Well, I love it. Thank you. Dr. Anthony.
So we embed social emotional learning. It's a curriculum that is really taught each and every day. I think 10 minutes at least is dedicated for our middle and high schools during advisory, which is the first thing in the morning, and for our elementary schools is, begin their day with that. Georgia is also looking at recess and bringing that back. And so, I think letting them have some outside time, Capella talked about just taking 15-minute walks. I think letting them get that energy out is going to be helpful. We know that instruction is very necessary, but if they're bouncing off the walls, they're not listening, don't have an opportunity to let out some excess energy. I think doing something outside is going to be helpful. So that's also being provided too. And then lastly, I think just making sure that we help to remove the stigma around mental health is going to be just as helpful. Self-care is mental health. I mean, mental health is self-care. I mean, it's all hand in hand. And so, really helping people to recognize and understand that, all of that is important, and that, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body. I think is something that, we need to keep continuing to stress, and doing that community outreach and making sure that if whether it be social media, whether it be podcasts, whatever it is that we can do to do the outreach and make sure we help to remove the stigma, that is going to help us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. B.
I think just be the change. Start calling in the good and stop calling out the bad. I think when we call people in for good things and we call parents in for great things, call students in, call teachers in, and change our mindset just to really be focused on positive relationships. And that starts with calling yourself in for good things, using your own name and saying, you did good, you did this well. And then start just rolling that out to everyone around you.
Thank you so much. Brittany.
I would say, I think Dr. Anthony said this earlier, our district has taken a less punitive approach and really been enforcing more incentives, and that's really gone over well for students and mental health as far as being incentivized versus penalized for whatever they may be going through. Also normalizing mental health and mental health support. So the district this year has been really good with over long breaks providing students with mental health resources, whether it's the text lines or, you can log on to BetterHelp or what have you to support your mental health. And also letting them know what resources are available for them while in school, in case they don't know. And then also we have a lot of mental health forums to promote mental health among not just the students and teachers, but also the parents. So parents can know what things to look out for, how to support their students and things like that.
Love it. So good. These are great. We obviously need to do a part 2 where we just keep sharing more. Thank you so much. I'm going to post a couple of links here, and then we'll wrap things up with one final question. So first link here is a link to the SWA Summer Symposium, their wellness focused summer symposium. I just put a link in the chat. Capella, do you want to mention anything about that?
I'm so excited for it. It's coming up so fast. And yes, Wendy, we will see you there. I'm so psyched. It's going to be our first ever summer symposium. It's completely focused on wellness and mental health for school social workers and their campuses and students. We're going to have an amazing amount of activities outside of sessions, but we'll also have sessions that'll total up to 8 CEs. So if you want to take care of yourself and take a nice long weekend up to the mountains in Utah and get some CEs checked off, this is going to be a perfect event for you.
And as a Utah resident, I will tell you, the location they have picked is incredible. If you want to see just pristine mountain beauty, come check it out. They're going to Snowbird. It's awesome. The other thing I'm gonna throw in the chat right now, YTRI would love to share a resilience bundle with our attendees. It includes a free parent resource. There's no login or paywall in front of it. It's a resource that you can share with parents. I think it's particularly useful for school social workers that are supporting entire families in many cases. There's a great parent resource on resilience to help teach the skills of resilience at a family and parent level. It reinforces skills that can be taught to the kiddos. I put the link in there. It's just a little form you have to fill out. Last question of the day, and then we'll wrap things up. I just want to hear something that is giving you hope right now in education. And for this, let's go Dr. Anthony, Dr. B, Brittany, and then Capella. And while you respond to that, I'm going to put up a slide deck in the back with information on that resilience bundle, as well as contact information for our attendees if you have any questions for them. Go ahead, Dr. Anthony.
Well, it's graduation season for us, so it's a beautiful thing to see them walk across the stage, and see their parents and families and friends come and support them. So that gives me hope, because you see the fruition of all of your work from pre-K up until 12th grade, and to see them walk across that stage, and to hear the number of students who got scholarships to go to different places, and it's just very hopeful. So I'll just stop there. Graduation.
I love it. It's a hopeful day. Dr. B.
I think what's giving me hope right now is just all of the wonderful things that I'm seeing social workers, out here doing in the community. All the time, social workers are in the news, and I don't ever think that social workers give themselves enough credit and don't get enough accolades. So it's amazing, and we're starting a little section on our website where we put shout outs like social workers in the news. And anybody who has any, send them to us, but we're trying to, further promote the amazing things that are happening everywhere that we don't see enough of.
I love it. Thank you. Let's see, Brittany.
Say right now, summer vacation is giving me hope. It's all there's a quote I see online often that says it always seems impossible until it's done. And I just know that these have been some very trying years being a school social worker. So it's always just amazing that when you're in the thick of it, you're thinking like, we're never going to make it out of this. There's so many days left. And so to be on the other side is just really refreshing and hopeful.
Thank you so much. I feel that. Capella.
I think for me, what gives me hope is the innovations. We talked about some of the new technology coming out and how that's being used. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what education looks like in the next 10 years and beyond. And I'm also just always feeling hopeful and inspired by the new and younger generations of professionals that are joining our campuses every year.
Love it. Me too. That's all great responses. I'll answer my own question as well. For me, I'm going to echo Dr. Anthony's response, just because this year graduation was a little bit personal. My second oldest child graduated last night, and it's a great moment. It's one of those great moments. It's far from the end. It's just the beginning for these kiddos stepping into adulthood, but it represents, I got kind of emotional. It surprised myself. It represents a whole village that has helped raise these kiddos, and all of us in whatever role we represent as part of that village plays a really important part. And so I felt a lot of gratitude last night for all the educators and caring adults that have helped out in the lives of my kiddos, and just want to pass that on to all of you. You're doing great work. You're all making a bigger difference than it sometimes feels you are. And I hope you walk away with some strategies today and a resolve to practice a little self-care going into the summer. Get those batteries recharged, because we need you. The world still needs great educators, and this field still attracts the best humans on the planet. It really does, across the board in education. It's one of the things that combats any cynicism that I have about the world, is when I get to meet with and train and visit with educators and mental health professionals. It constantly reminds me that the best humans continue to get into this field. So let's give a huge round of applause to our panelists today. Thank you so much. Thank you for representing SWA. SWA is a great organization. Check out the link on the page there. I'll throw it into the chat again. Highly recommend, if you're a social worker and you're not associated with SWA, check it out. There's some great benefits. And then follow them on social media. And then take a look at those resources. If you'll hit that link from us as well on the QR code, we'll email you out some resources, including a parent guide. And then lastly, huge round of applause for our attendees. And thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing the work. Hope we'll see you. We're going to hold a couple of these over the summer. They won't be quite as frequent during the summer, but we'll hold a few. We hope to see you back on them. And then looking forward to being with you all again next school year as well. So, hey, thank you, everybody. I'm going to play us out with a little